pushing the reset button. It's not a good or bad decision in and of itself. It's not something that Source either condones or condemns. You cannot say that suicide is wrong without also saying that death is wrong. Death is always a choice. You choose not to participate in the same way as you chose to participate in the first place. Because you are 2 points of perspective. What I mean by this is, every single death on this earth could be seen as a suicide. Because in order to die, your individual perspective has to align with your higher self-perspective in order to die. Basically, when your source energy is pulling back from you, back into non-physical perspective, you have to align with that decision. This is why a lot of people may end up in comas. What a coma is somebody deciding whether to stay or whether to align with death. So, death is always a choice, regardless of whether you're in an accident and you weren't necessarily intending to die in the first place, or whether you choose to take your death into your own hands and commit suicide. For the majority of people here on Earth, death is such a liberation that you would give it to yourself. If you were suffering, you would give it to yourself. You would definitely not use it for the punishment of the people who commit the worst crimes on Earth.
I can see that, yeah.
Do you understand that there is a certain element of life that's suffering? To perceive yourself as a separate being is suffering. The first suffering is ego.
Yeah.
Ego is a sense of self. You perceive separation. In death, you can perceive no such thing as separation. Do you want to know what death is really like? Tell me everything you love the most.
Sister,
Okay, so that feeling you get when you see her. What else?
I'm drawing a blank on it.
Well, death. To experience death is like all of those things at once. And then you go past that layer of reality and you're in complete and utter peace. Peace is beyond polarity. It's beyond positive and negative. It's neither. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no way out of that dark. Intuitively, we all know that Source is pure positive vibration. So intuitively, we all know that to die is to reemerge with that pure positive vibration. We know that it is relief. And so, from that perspective, like I was talking about earlier, that perspective that there is no light at the end of the tunnel, it seems like the only option. Teacher, I was seeing people individually. This is before my career blew up to the degree that I couldn't see people individually anymore. I was seeing this woman named Leslie Wainsgard, her and her husband. She was coming up for these individual sessions. She was under the care of a psychiatrist and a psychologist. She was on medication. She was suicidally depressive and anxious. I was helping her with my own methodologies.
she comes across very strong. But after listening to an interview with you, Cameron, I listened to a 5-hour interview of your experience living with this woman. It turns out that her public persona and what she's actually trying to present herself to be isn't in fact what she really is behind closed doors. Now,
yeah, where do you want me to start? I mean, it was insanity, pure insanity. I've never met a crazier, more unstable person in my entire life, but I can't say that it's because of abuse. I just find her to be mentally ill in my opinion, she's just very manipulative, pathologically manipulative. She's a fabulist and a confabulator, and she really, I would call her a mythomaniac. She makes up stories. It's definitely, being around her is like, it's like being in a crazy ward. She is so incongruent with her teachings. It's staggering. Yes, and this is just a preface. I mean, she was somebody, being around her was like being on a constant trauma cycle. I mean, this is a woman whose emotions shift. She's capricious. I mean, she just, from one minute to the next, her emotions are up and down. So that was pretty standard. You get used to that, but then you have this person that's also kind of keeping you off balance, making little comments, kind of trying to make you doubt yourself all the time. Her disorders that she has is, on top of being hypersensitive and having shifting moods and all the rest of it, is this borderline personality disorder where she just flips a switch and goes on a tirade. Integrity, and then she immediately jumps to telling me that I am suicidal. And I said, what? I'm not suicidal. I've never been suicidal in my life. And she said, well, what if I told you you're passively suicidal instead? And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm committed to life, and you really need to get in your car. Seriously, she compared me to this woman that was her client who actually did kill herself, Leslie. And she compared me to her and told me that, I'm just like her, and I really need to decide whether or not I'm committed to life, and I should get in my car and go drive, and go get in your car, go drive, and I want you to go right now and go decide whether or not you're committing to life.
Number 1, you have to know that you can always kill yourself tomorrow. You can always kill yourself in 5 minutes, in fact. And what does this do for us when we actually acknowledge that this is the case? It makes it so that suicide can be our safety net or our reset button that's always available to us.
Not just to really sound the alarm, but to encourage you to take this problem seriously and hopefully to act accordingly. We need to do something to protect the lives of young people. Adolescence and young adulthood were really the period of maximal risk when it comes to the onset of mental illness and addictions. The good news is that my friend survived, he recovered, and he went on to have a successful life and a successful career in medicine. Now, let me tell you a little bit about suicide. Suicide is among the 10 leading causes of death across the lifespan and across the world. But its impact is particularly profound in adolescence and young adulthood, where it's the second leading cause of death in the United States. Only accidents kill more young people, And if you look around this audience, it's probably the second leading cause of death in this audience. In 2013, nearly 4,900 people between the ages of 15 and 25 killed themselves. That represents almost 20% of all the deaths in that age group. That's 3 times the number of deaths in that age group than deaths due to cancer. And what's even more shocking is if you add together all of the deaths due to cancer, deaths due to cardiovascular disease, deaths due to diabetes, deaths due to respiratory illnesses like asthma and cystic fibrosis, deaths from pneumonia, influenza, and meningitis, and HIV, and you add them all together, more people die by suicide in that age group. Now, if you find that shocking, I think that's probably a good thing, because one of my goals today is to capture your attention. Perhaps another story will help do that as well. I want to talk to you for a moment about a remarkable young man by the name of Kevin Hines. When Kevin was 19, after several weeks of really severe depression and distorted thinking, he left his house in San Francisco, began walking towards the Golden Gate Bridge, intent that he would kill himself. Now, like most people who kill themselves, Kevin suffered from a major mental illness. In his case, it was bipolar disorder. And also, like acutely suicidal individuals, Kevin was ambivalent. He went back and forth about wanting to live and wanting to die. So as he walked, his thoughts racing towards the bridge, he resolved that, if even one person interrupted him, tried to help, or even asked how he was doing, he would not make the jump. But nobody did stop him. As he paced back and forth on the walkway of the bridge, finally someone did tap him on the shoulder. Kevin turned, tears running down his face, and saw a woman with a camera who very politely asked him to take her picture on the bridge. Well, Kevin's a nice guy, and he politely, took this woman's picture, handed her back the camera, and now convinced that nobody cared, he threw himself over the rail, headlong. Now, as Kevin started to fall, he immediately realized that he didn't want to die. And he also realized that all of the problems, all of the pain that he realized that he didn't want to die. He immediately realized that he didn't want to die. Immediately realized that he didn't want to die. Really was solvable with one painful exception, and that was that he was probably falling to his death. Now, Kevin is not alone in terms of jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. Over 1,200 people have killed themselves since the bridge opened in 1937. But Kevin isn't one of them. Kevin's a rarity. He's one of a handful of people who survived that jump to actually come and tell us about it. And as he fell, he prayed for God to save him, righted himself in the air, and miraculously, he is a very powerful advocate for suicide prevention.
Because you don't. I want to be happy and I want to live is not the real truth for you. Do you see that? You're the kind of person who really doesn't actually want to live yet. You have not committed to life yet. So that's just a lie. Sure, you'd like it if life felt good, but you don't feel like it's possible, so you would rather die. But you also don't want to be, like, suffering forever, and you sure as hell don't want to come do this life over again. Yes, I've been watching you.
Yeah. Capacity to think that I'm going to actually kill myself because she told me to, for one, and then for two, she claims that the purpose of your life is to find joy and be happy. And whoever told us that that was the case? I mean, there are so many instances where we've had spirituality for thousands of years. This is not new. And she's packaging up narcissism, solipsism, hedonism, consumerism, and calling it positive world change. Packaging up narcissism, solipsism, hedonism, consumerism, and calling it positive world change. Packaging up narcissism, solipsism, hedonism, consumerism, and calling it positive world change.
A woman came up to my table, and she picked up my New Age Bullshit DVD, which is available here today in the back. And she said, "What's this about?" With a real skeptical look. And I explained, I said, well, it's a 7-hour extended video podcast that has many, many slides, okay? I gave a shortened version of it at the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia. And this is the extended version that goes deeply into the deception of the New Age movement. And this is what the New Age hoax is peddling to people. You know what that is? It's called solipsism, wrapped in a nice, neat new package. Solipsism. How many people are familiar with the ideology called solipsism? Okay? Solipsism is a completely egoic and destructive ideology that has absolutely no bearing or resemblance to truth in any way. And the people who are solipsists are mentally ill. I'm not even going to provide any evidence of that. I'm telling you, you need to research this religion and sickness for yourself. It's a mental illness. A solipsist is a mentally ill person who should probably be somehow removed, segregated from society, and institutionalized until they are made well, because they are a destructive influence on society.
And I see that coming, but we'll see how it all pans out, because what she's doing is, there are consequences. Eventually it's going to catch up. And again, like you say, that was a very good point, where she's masquerading as showing the way, when in reality she's denigrating. She's leading people into worse, more delusional, she's passing along her own toxic pathology to people and trying to exalt mental illness. Your outward appearance is a reflection of spiritual attainment. How you look on the outside is actually a reflection of how spiritual you are. I mean, this is her philosophy. It's absolute insanity. And, you know, it's a very egotistic crowd that this is appealing to. And at the same time, she's also marketing herself as a trauma and abuse survivor, so she's getting a lot of mentally and emotionally wounded people.
My sister killed herself. Just in time for my video. Yeah. So, the process of exiting this life into death seems like jumping off of a giant cliff. It seems like a lot of risk. But when you're in that kind of a chasm, where life is so dark to you, that doesn't seem like much of a risk. So instead of jumping off of a cliff, it feels a little bit more like jumping off of a rock.